had it in my mind that I needed him to recognize the damage he had done to me, to our children, and to our marriage. I had it in my mind that he needed to apologize for an itemized list of wrongs and then ask me for my forgiveness. Well, can I just tell you that listening to myself saying that just reeks of arrogance on my part? But the honest truth is that I thought those things would bring closure to that chapter of my life and that they would be the catalyst to being able to forgive. Now, grab a tissue as I look back on 25 years. Let's rock. Are you walking through a storm that feels like it will never end? Do you wonder if life's storms have stolen the beauty from your life for good? You're in the right place. My name is Heather, and like you, I've been through a storm or two and wondered if life would ever be beautiful again. Here we share warriors' words, stories of discovering beauty after battles, and the worth in your wounds. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome, warriors. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to remind you of my fundraiser. I am raising funds to start my nonprofit. God, in his wisdom, has chosen someone with no money to start a nonprofit and build a home. I first balked at this and questioned, just like Gideon did. But I came to realize that by using someone who can't do this, God's might, God's power, God's love is what shines. Through all of us working together, it's not one person who gets the glory. It's God. This is God's project, and it's up to his people to make it work. Please go to Ko-fi.com, and that's ko-fi.com/warrior words. You can make a one-time donation or set up a monthly donation. You can also purchase anything that I have in my store. And since the last time I mentioned this, we've had our first donation. So thank you. Thank you very much. And just a little bit about what I'm raising money for. And that is the first step is $200. And that's for filing with the state. The second step is $600 for the federal filing. That's for that 501c3 designation that you see on a lot of nonprofits. And then from there, it's about $2,500 to get both a logo designed and a nonprofit website built. And I have a breakdown of these startup costs right there on the Ko-fi page. So I would love your help to get God's project started. Now, as the title of this episode indicates, I want to reflect on 25 years it's not really 25 years post domestic violence, but it's 25 years since it started. But before that, I want to touch briefly on 5 years post cancer. October is both Domestic Violence Awareness Month and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Both are part of my story. In January of 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And on September 5th, 2025, I officially completed my treatment. If you want to hear more about my cancer journey, please go back and listen to episode 3. So it's been 5.5 years since that devastating diagnosis. There was a lot of suffering, but there were also beautiful moments. The most recent being seeing that empty bottle of hormone blockers, knowing that I did not have to refill that prescription and that medically stopped um, that prescription medically stopped my body's natural hormone production. So no more. Yay. And these are the moments of beauty that I choose to remember and cling to. They are the hope and the triumph. It does no good for me to focus or remember the bad, the ugly, or what I perceive was stolen from me and my family. Focusing on the negative only serves to bring me down and fuel even greater negative thoughts and feelings. Now, just being real here, that does happen on occasion. But when those kinds of thoughts try to worm their way in, I do my best to take them captive and drive them right back out as quickly as possible. And that's the same with my domestic violence story. Now, like I said 10 minutes. I said 25 years. I said 25 years later. But I'm actually counting from the beginning, not the point where my marriage ended. You see, this week would have been my 25th wedding anniversary. When I first thought about it, I reflected on the irony of my domestic violence marriage beginning in Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But I was unaware. As a new bride, looking forward to the promise of marriage and children, family, the idea of domestic violence was the furthest thing from my mind. The purpose of this episode is not to retell my story. If you want to learn more about that, please go back and listen to episode 2. For this episode, I want to look more at the ending, the healing, the road to thriving after domestic violence. And it's a little over half and half now. All of the legal stuff ended in or around 2013. But just because the law says it's over doesn't mean everything is wrapped up neatly and tied with a pretty bow. It's only been around, or since around 2021, that there's been no contact. That can make some healing difficult. Words are still said. Wounds are reopened. And I think that's another evil of violence and divorce. It's another reminder to carefully consider who you are marrying before you say, I do. Because when there are children involved, the courts require contact with both parents. And sometimes this is a very good thing, but other times, not so much. The one thing it most certainly does is prolong the contact between the abuser and the spouse who is being abused, allowing for more emotional abuse to continue. And I don't know what the solution to that is, other than to start earlier and have both spouses be healthier prior to getting married. So, what does the abused spouse do during this time of ending the legal proceedings and the legal ability to go no contact? For me, I worked on healing myself. I tried to become a stronger, better person for 2 reasons. The first was because my kids needed me. They needed a mother they could count on, a mother they could trust to provide for them and keep them safe. The second reason was more personal, and so it did come second. But that reason was for me. While I was not at fault for being abused, I realized that I allowed things I shouldn't have allowed. I made mistakes. I gave in to demands. I allowed Heather to be beat down and almost destroyed. I tried hard to save my marriage, and I tried so hard that Heather became lost. I was confused about what God wanted, and I did not seek wise counsel. I allowed things to continue and get worse by hiding it in the darkness instead of bringing it into the light. So I had to do some work on myself, and that included forgiveness. Forgiveness of him and forgiveness of myself. It certainly was not easy, but in the end, it was freeing. But there was another thing I clung to for a while before I was able to let go and forgive, and that was the concept of closure. I had it in my mind that I needed him to recognize the damage he had done to me, to our children, and to our marriage. I had it in my mind that he needed to apologize for an itemized list of wrongs and then ask me for my forgiveness. Wow. Can I just tell you that listening to myself say that just reeks of arrogance on my part? But the honest truth is that I thought those things would bring closure to that chapter of my life, and that they would be the catalyst to being able to forgive. The truth is, those things never came. And if I had waited for them, I'd still be waiting. Forgiveness would never have happened on my end. And I'd be sitting in, maybe wallowing in, such negativity. As a side note, I wonder if the outcome of my cancer journey would have been any different if I had been stuck in that negativity. I remember my surgeon telling me before my mastectomy that my mental state, my thoughts, emotions, and feelings all played a big role in partnering with her and the rest of my medical team. Now, of course, I'll never know, but it is something to think about. If letting go of negativity and expectations of others can impact your physical or mental health, is that not reason enough to do the hard work? Looking back, I certainly think so. Now, back to closure. I was listening to Claudine on the Embodied Catholic Women podcast or Woman podcast, and she did an episode on closure earlier this year. And she was also a guest on this podcast, and hers is episode 66. Now, she was sharing about how closure, as an expectation from another person, is not realistic, nor is it necessary for us to heal. For those of us who have experienced abusive relationships, we could be waiting the rest of our lives for something that will never happen. Now, would it be nice to close a chapter and lock it away with a key? To have admissions, apologies, and acknowledgments from both sides wrapped up with a nice bow? Of course, that would be the ideal. But unless both people do the work, that's not likely to happen in this fallen world. The only person you have control over in this scenario, or really ever, is you. You need to be the one to work on yourself. Dive into prayer journaling, and seeking wise counsel. Acknowledge your part, because even though somebody is an abuser, there's two sides to everything. And one side is not perfect, while the other side 100% at fault. Let go of the past. Don't dwell, don't ruminate. Ask for forgiveness. Now, a little caveat here. You don't need to ask for forgiveness from the abuser if it is not safe for you to do so either physically or mentally. But ask for forgiveness from God. And then offer forgiveness, whether you have closure or not. And then move forward. 25 years later, my life is not perfect. I still have challenges and storms, including another medical one that you'll hear about in an upcoming episode. But the victory I find in the aftermath of my domestic violence marriage is that he no longer lives rent-free in my head. There's no room in my life for allowing the demons of the past to take up space or residence. I am a victor, not a victim. And so are you. I'm going to say that again. You are a victor. You are not a victim. Something to think about this week. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.